Coogs House. God never makes mistakes. He may work in mysterious ways, but he never makes mistakes. So I waited for my blessing and headed to an organization that wants me, and I'm ready to work for them. Jamal Shead, Toronto Raptor. Jamal Shead today.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you want to join the conversation but don't know what to say, tell us if you like poutine or even know anything about the Canadian dish. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and it is all about, for however long we end up going today, Jamal Shead going to the Toronto Raptors. Jamal Shead was drafted by the Toronto Raptors. Today we're going to talk some about the fit, the decision, what went into the process, etc. It was not necessarily your most normal NBA draft affair, but if you're watching it on TV, Jamal Shead did go in the second round to the, I guess he was technically drafted by the Sacramento Kings at pick 45, the 15th pick of the second round. However, this is where things get a little trickier. At the start of the second round, which had its own day this year, Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN Insider, outlined a trade that Sacramento had made with Toronto. The trade included sending Davion Mitchell, the 25-year-old from Baylor, Sasha Vesnikov, a 6'8" Greek-Bulgarian forward, 28 years old, and the 45th pick from Sacramento to Toronto. Toronto was sending back Jalen McDaniels, a 26-year-old power forward, went to San Diego State a few years back. This is essentially sloughing some contracts, it looks like, for the 45th pick going to Toronto. They're taking on a little bit bigger contracts than Mitchell and Vesnikov. Both are in the final year of their contract and expiring deals. The Raptors had pick 31, the first pick of the draft, of the second round of the draft, and we kind of wanted to ensure they had more picks later on. And then with the first pick of the second round, they took a guy named Jonathan Magbo, 6'6", long-armed wing from San Francisco. And it kind of feels like they wanted to make sure they had the 45th pick before doing that pick, because Magbo is friends with one Scottie Barnes, a star player for Toronto, a player that just signed to play there for a long time, a young player, and to kind of encourage him to sit there through this rebuild. So it makes sense they bring on one of his other young buddies, but they didn't make that pick before knowing they had another pick later. Magbo is a pro. I don't mean to say he's not a pro, but I do think it's worth pointing out that, like, that's an interesting way to go about this. So Toronto makes that pick at 31, has the 45th pick later. For what it's worth, Scottie Barnes is at the celebration party for Magbo. I mean, they're that close of friends. So I think that is a fair statement. But they get their guy, our guy, Jamal Shead, at 45. Now, we'll talk obviously about his fit and things like that, but to round out the draft of Jamal Shead's current teammates, they also added in Ulrich Chamachi. I'm learning that one still. Ulrich Chamachi is 6'10", big guy. They picked up Jacoby Walker, the Baylor kid we talked about when we played Baylor earlier this year. Star, in the first round at pick number 19. If you want to go check that out, you can watch Locked On Raptors. They do a full 40 minutes on the Raptors draft in their Thursday episode. It's really, really well done, I thought. But if you look at the whole draft, I think there's a number of things that work in Jamal's favor and how he gets to Toronto. First, they took on expiring deals and salary in Mitchell and Vesnikov to bring him in, right? That means they wanted that pick to go get him. Davion Mitchell had the great career at Baylor, but has had kind of a declining career in the pros. Played just 15 minutes last year, had just 5 points per game, just under 2 assists per game. And again, that's on decreased usage year after year. It's no longer a crowded backcourt there. At one point, you could have said they had too many guards. They decreased that, right? Vesnikov, The perimeter forward has never really had a big role there, and was traded to Toronto after threatening to go back to Europe if they didn't send him somewhere where he'd play more. So he may not even get to Toronto, right? We'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, they get Jamal Shead at 45, 15th pick the second round. And per Kelly Iko, writer for The Athletic, Houston-based writer, mostly covers the Rockets, but obviously in this instance has connections to people in front offices and is in Houston. And Iko reports that part of the reason Jamal Shead was drafted here is that he already has a guaranteed NBA contract, not a two-way or a G League contract. And what happens there, for people like, wait, how could you be drafted and have your contract already guaranteed? What's happening there is you've got agents doing a lot of talking behind the scenes. This is not uncommon for any NBA player, although it was apparently talked about mostly in the NBA draft if you watched it, for a very famous NBA player's son who was being very specific to some teams. But team agents will say things like, hey, so-and-so says they're going to give my guy an NBA deal. Are you talking NBA deals? What are we talking about if you pick him, right? Those kinds of things are working out in the second round, especially where like those things are not guaranteed, right? And so it does sound like Jamal Shead has a guaranteed deal per Kelly Iko of The Athletic to go play in Toronto. That's a big deal. For a second round pick, that's a really, really big deal. And it kind of reassures us that that move before the second round, where they did all that trading to make sure they had another second round pick besides just the 31st pick, was to make sure they could pull in Jamal, at least have a shot to, right? That 45th pick was right around the part of the draft where he was being projected at the late end of things. And then ESPN did a mock draft, did a breakdown of the mock second round after the first round was over, and they put him at 43. So that's in the same window, right? And so I think it's safe to say all of that is that Jamal landed in a place that wants Jamal. And that's important. He said it himself, right? And I opened with a quote, but I'll say it again. He said, God never makes mistakes. He may work in mysterious ways, but he never makes mistakes. So I waited for my blessing, and I'm headed to an organization that wants me, and I'm ready to work for them. Again, this is after the emotions, after talking with them on the phone, after talking to his agent, after doing something. Like, that's him calming down and saying, okay, they want me. I'm ready to go work for them. Now, I want to spend some time in the second segment here talking about the fit, because I think Jamal Shead is an excellent fit in Toronto. That's why they wanted him, frankly. Raptors are leaning into being a young team. They're really kind of shifting gears. They won in 2019, trying to run it back without Kawhi Leonard for a couple of years. Had to do some resets, got Scottie Barnes and build around him. Jamal Shead fits great with Scottie Barnes. And I want to get into how he fits in all those plans in a second. But first, today's episode is about building a great team around Jamal. And if you're building a great team in terms of your ride, you need passion, drive, and patience. The winning formula for championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts to choose from. You always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because the eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. For the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusive supply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, so Jamal Shead's fit here with the Raptors is important. They wanted him because he's going to make them a better basketball team. Toronto is tearing it down, rebuilding. Last season, they got rid of Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby. They got rid of some guys that we saw make some big runs in the playoffs because they're trying to build around this guy named Scottie Barnes. Now, Scottie Barnes is a 6'9", 10-ish, strong, long, doesn't really have a position type of basketball player, right? And up and down their roster, I think it's interesting to look at all the different guards that they have. I mean, again, it makes sense that they gave Jamal Shead a guaranteed contract. Once you just look at the guard room, who else he's playing with here, right? So guards that they have under contract next season right now in Toronto: Emmanuel Quickley, Grady Dick, Jacoby Walter, who they just drafted, R.J. Barrett. They just traded for Davion Mitchell. They probably re-sign one of, I'd probably get Bruce Brown, and Ochai Agbaji is in the last year of his deal after being drafted a couple years ago in the first round. That's 7 guards. However, all of those 7 guards, even Davion Mitchell, his last couple of seasons in Sacramento, get the bulk of their minutes playing the shooting guard or the off guard, right? Now, part of this is by design because Scottie Barnes, their go-to forward, is a point forward. He does a lot of the creation on his own, don't have point guard in the same kind of way. But also, he can't be the point guard in every setup. That's not, we're going to get into why that is in a second. But Jamal Shead steps in, and in some ways, you could argue he might be the only real point guard on the roster. And I don't mean that to say that he's going to guarantee walk in and start. I do think he's a 8 to 10 year NBA career guy at least. I do think he'll start for a number of teams, if not a long career with one team. I don't know if he walks in the door and starts for a way that's really hard to do as a rookie. Point guard's a really hard position to do that. Point guard and center are the 2 hardest positions to do that, I would say, right? But I will say that he's got a really good chance to make an impact out the gate. Now, with a guaranteed contract, again, this is Kelly Eco reporting. I'm echoing the report. I don't have any sources except for reading Kelly's tweets, right? But with a guaranteed contract, he probably will play the early part of the year, some back and forth with the G League just to get some game reps and experience, especially with Toronto, whether the 905 right there. You don't have to even go back and forth across the border. It's all very close, right? So you can kind of like play on Saturday for 905 and play on Sunday for the Raptors, right? That's not a hard thing to do. We saw Jarris Walker do that some early in the season with Indiana. The difference between what Jarris was doing in Indiana and what I think Jamal's going to do in Toronto is Toronto's trying to develop their young guys to win in like 2027, right? 2026, 7, build winning habits, right? Have the right guys on the bus, right? Those kinds of things. Jarris walked into Indiana, and while they thought that was going to be what they were doing, very quickly they got Pascal Siakam trying to win the whole thing, right? And they got pretty far in doing it. Eastern Conference Finals, right? Toronto ain't doing all that. That's not going to be the fear for Jamal Shead. Fear, I guess, is a weird way to say winning is the problem. They're going to be practicing winning, getting ready to go win, right? And Jamal Shead's a great guy to do that. They don't have a whole lot of point guards in the roster. We've been through that. I do think it's interesting that he also walks in as one of the better defenders. They just acquired Davion Mitchell, right? It's a great defender as well. And for all his things he lacks on offense, Davion has proved to be a very good defender. He's not a true point guard. And so I think that's where Jamal, in terms of next season, will have a little bit of an edge. Jamal's also a little bit younger. So in terms of developing your guys for that run in a couple years, you invest in the younger guy, those kinds of things. But like Emmanuel Quickley, Grady Dick, R.J. Barrett, not great defenders on the perimeter. Certainly not Jamal Shead, National Defense Player of the Year kind of defenders, right? So be that as it may. I also think it's worth pointing out that while Scottie Barnes is positionless, they hired a new coach in the summer of 2023, Darko Rakovic. Now, I had to look up some on Darko Rakovic because I didn't know a whole lot about him. He did a whole lot of his head coaching in Europe before coming to the States. In the States, he head coached the Tulsa 66ers, the Oklahoma City G League team at the time, right? He then has been on the staff at Oklahoma City and a handful of others. He got to be on the all-star staff in Oklahoma City with Scott Brooks. He was in Phoenix for a hot second. Anyway, in all those spots, right, even with creative scoring off-ball guys, right, Darko was around offenses that needed a true point guard, right? They needed somebody to be that true point guard fit. Insert Jamal Shead, right? That's the purpose of that for sure, right? For what it's worth, around Jamal Shead, you'll have some great shooting for all the things we talked about, like not having a point guard, not having great defenders out there. Quickly, Grady Dick and RJ Barrett each shot over 35% from three last season. Scottie Barnes, for all the creation he was doing, also shot at 34% from three last season, right? They're going to be okay in terms of shooting. Okay, it's going to be about Jamal Shead getting to the basket and actually collapsing the defense, and I think he'll be able to do that, and then kicking out to those guys, getting the ball in action, getting the ball in motion. Rajakovic, I'm going to get that right, Rajakovic, coach of Toronto. He's big on movement of the ball, European guy, European basketball, ball never stops, right? But I think that's when the similarities of how Jamal Shead and Scottie Barnes both create also overlap some, right? The ball won't stop. You got multiple creators on the floor at the same time, right? Moving it all around. They're not the Golden State Warriors, but it's not unlike the way Steve Kerr runs that offense out there, right? Where they just don't stop moving, right? The same kind of thing is totally possible when you have both Barnes and Shead on the floor, right? And the biggest fit here may be, and this is probably where we'll wrap, in not necessarily just his fit on the floor. We're going to find out a lot about that in the coming days and weeks, working on some stuff with Locked On Raptors, talking to some people at other Raptors podcasts. We're obviously going to see some Summer League games as well, all that good stuff, right? But the fit here with Jamal and the organization, both from a high-class, high-character culture kind of standpoint, just organizationally, no one ever says anything bad about the way the Raptors run things. But the guy signing the checks, Masai Ujiri, at least signing off on the checks, I should say, took Jamal at 45. And Masai Ujiri is the perfect guy to take a guy like Jamal. And it's why he's giving him a contract, right? Masai Ujiri came into the Raptors. He's an executive of the year before. He's won a bunch of awards, right? He built a champion team in 2019, right? But he came to the Raptors in 2013. And Kyle Lowry had been traded for the summer before, summer 2012, from the Houston Rockets to the Toronto Raptors. Kyle Lowry is commonly compared to, because of his long career at 6 foot, his great leadership, his intangibles, etc., very often compared to Jamal. But in 2012, he got traded to Toronto and it's kind of like going off to no man's land, right? And so in 2013, Ujiri gets the team. He walks in. He sees the best guy on the team in terms of all-star status and stuff like that is Andre Bargnani, big, tall Italian. He says, "You're getting traded out of here." Sends him to New York. He then, and this is like, Kyle Lowry talks about this as part of like his growing up moments. He walks over to Lowry and sits him down and says, "Do you want to be a $2 million a year, $3 million a year player for the rest of your career and be done in a couple of years? Or do you really want to dedicate yourself to this thing and be a $10 million, $15 million all-star type of player?" 2 years later, Kyle Lowry's an all-star, right? Like, it doesn't take long, but Ujiri saw it in Lowry, worked with Lowry, developed with Lowry, built a program and system around Lowry. So much, though, that he trades off Bargnani that summer of 2013. That fall, Rudy Gay, 6'6", 6'7", perimeter guy, and Kyle Lowry are like not being able to share the ball, like, but can't bring out the best in one another. Both good pros, can't bring out the best in one another. And Masai Ujiri trades Rudy Gay, who had been a lottery pick, but he trades Rudy Gay, moves him out of the way for DeMar DeRozan, who pairs up with Kyle Lowry's game a lot better, right? He favors the 6-foot guard in a moment, time and time again, when others might not have. Then Ujiri, so those things around Lowry. Lowry's had a great career. He and DeRozan paired up great. They're great friends. They're winning that division year after year in 2014, 15, 16, etc. 2016 summer comes, and a kid gets undrafted, or goes undrafted, by the name of Fred VanVleet at Wichita State. Great winner, competitive, good shooter too, great character guy, about 5'11". And Masai Ujiri gives him a call and says, listen, you're going to come play for our summer league team. We're going to give you a multi-year contract before you even finish the summer league if it works. You just got to come work. They get Fred VanVleet, give him a multi-year contract with Lowry, Corey Joseph, other point guards on the roster. To give another short point guard a spot because it's the right kind of guy. In that 2016-17 season, he plays them for 905, plays spots here and there. 2017-18 kind of starts off slow. By the end of 2017, going into January 2018, he's getting more rotational spot. By the end of the year, he's getting third most votes for Sixth Man of the Year. 2019, they're winning it all. He's getting 25 points game of the finals, right? 2019, 2020, the next season after they win it all, Fred VanVleet's starting games for them, right? Ujiri sees these guys with intangibles that don't have the measurables. Insert Jamal Shead. Every intangible, every award, every ounce of praise, every you watch the film, it all leaps off the video. Boy, 6 feet tall. And I could not pick a better place for Jamal Shead to go that is going to look past that height and weight thing and say, this guy can play, this guy plays the right way, etc. Now, I wouldn't have predicted it beforehand. Toronto didn't work Jamal out, right? Or at least it wasn't publicized if they did, right? They saw him at the Combine. They saw the college tape you and I did. They undoubtedly had, Zoom, Skype interviews, whatever, right? But Jamal lands there, and my first thought is, perfect. Whatever your thought was, tell me in the comments down below. Locked On Cougs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.